Hey guys, welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. My name is Brian.
And my name is Maggie.
And we interview Asian entrepreneurs around the world to amplify their voices and empower Asians to pursue their dreams and goals.
We believe that each person has a message and a unique story from their entrepreneurial journey that they can share with all of us. Hi everyone, welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. My name is Maggie.
My name is Brian.
And today we have a very special guest with us. His name is Brian Yang, and he is an actor and producer whose producing credits include Late Life, Jeremy Lin documentary LINSANITY, Shanghai International Film Festival award-winning biopic Another Shot, I Can, I Will, I Did, and the upcoming SNAKEHEAD. Brian has also produced documentary specials for ESPN and Fox Sports. As an actor, his film credits include Saving Face, The Jade Pendant, and Laundromat, and TV credits include The Path, WESTWORLD, BLACKLIST, and Hawaii Five-0, which he played the lab tech Charlie Fong for 5 seasons on. This past year, he joined the Andrew Yang 2020 campaign in a role as a Regional Fundraiser Director. Brian, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Thank you for reading something that sounds like I wrote.
It is. It's exactly what you wrote.
I know.
Awesome. Well, yeah, very excited for you to be on the show today. We really want to get to know a little bit more about you and your background. Can you tell us a little bit about, your background, how you grew up, your relationship with your parents?
Sure. So I had a pretty typical, I guess, second generation Asian American upbringing. I was born in Columbus, Ohio. My parents immigrated to the Midwest from Taiwan in the 70s, or actually late 60s, I guess. And my father eventually, he's an architect. He got a job in the West Coast. So he moved us all out to California. Well, the three of us, my mom and myself, and then my sisters were born here in California. I have twin sisters, one of whom you've met, Stephanie. And yeah, we grew up in the Bay Area. I went all the way through college at UC Berkeley in the Bay. And then after I graduated, I left, not immediately, but like a year after I graduated, just trying to figure out what I want to do in my life. And I wound up doing the conservative thing. I went off to grad school at the time. I was a bio major at UC Berkeley, but I really fell into the dramatic arts department and started to do plays and really enjoyed acting, got bit by the acting bug. And then, but I, did the good Asian thing and went back to school. And that's what got me up to the East Coast, where I moved to Philadelphia, where I was pursuing a master's in physical therapy. So I was, using the bio degree to do like a health science thing. Yeah, I quickly found out I didn't really like what I was studying. Or that wasn't so much what I was studying, but just the idea of becoming a physical therapist. So, because once I started to do some rotations and like intern work, I didn't see myself in that field. So I always had that yearning to be in film and television. Mm-hmm. But I also had a very conservative sort of like, conservative side of me that also was hammered home by my parents, in that I had to like survive and live on my own and do something, that provided. So pursuing film and TV was definitely not that. Mm-hmm. So I wound up moving to New York City after Philly. I left school. I took a leave of absence, and this is actually, life comes full circle. I got a job. My first job in New York was at a .com startup with a guy named Andrew Yang.
Nice.
So this was in the late, to date myself, this was in the late 90s. And that's how I wound up getting to know Andrew, getting to know him quite well. So many years later, he winds up calling his friends, myself included, to say he was running for president. And we can probably get back into this later, but that I wound up going to work for him for a duration recently. But my background was that. And so, that's what got me, I guess, up till right after school.
Mm. Wow, that's really awesome to hear how life comes in full circle. One of my curious question is, like, as you are moving towards, your passion and moving to New York and pursuing film and working at a tech company, meeting Andrew Yang, what was your parents thought about this? They're like, wow, like how do they feel about you just doing a leave of absence, following your ambitions and dreams? How do they feel about that?
They were not happy, to say the least. I worked so hard to get into grad school, and then for me to say I think I'm not really happy here and I'm going to leave, they were like, what? Like, it was because I kind of I did work hard to get into grad school. Like the year after college, I had to go back to school and take some more prereqs that I didn't finish. Yeah, I had to take the GRE. I got some work experience. My parents were like elated. I got accepted into a couple programs, and they're like, yay, we can stop worrying about you. They assumed everything was good. I was on track. And then for me to just turn around and say, you know what, I don't want this. And I dropped it. They were like, what? Like, so we definitely had some battles. I remember vividly. But I think the thing, it wasn't so much that it was their dream for me to go in that field. It was just like, it was a respectable, stable, sort of normal career that they would not have to worry about, me putting food on the table over kind of thing. And so to say I wanted to go into the wild, wacky world of media, they couldn't wrap their heads around it. So yeah, we definitely there were many tears and arguments. And but the thing is, when I landed on my feet and said, hey, I'm moving to New York and I'm working a 9-to-5 job, Mom and Dad, don't worry, I'm going to have a paycheck. That kind of allayed their fears, because that to them is the most, for my parents, at least, it was the most important thing. Again, they didn't care what I was necessarily doing. They just figured trying to act and be in that film and TV world did not mean a steady paycheck. And they're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. But so I was able to kind of double dip in that I got myself a steady job, but I was really there to, moving to New York City, to be around the world of I didn't work on Broadway, but off Broadway and like the independent film and television scene, because New York is a great city as well. Obviously second to LA in terms of production and stuff, but it's a great place to be as well. So I was able to have, in a weird way, I was able to have my cake and eat it too. I mean, it was definitely challenging to have a side hustle with like trying to have a career. But I was at the time young and trying to figure it all out. And, it took a while. Eventually I did, but I was able to, that's just kind of how I dove into it and got going.
It's really awesome to hear too. And your story about double dipping, I think that appeals to all of us, especially growing up as Asian Americans or Asian around the world. The first concern for our parents is really knowing that our kids could provide for themselves, which is the reason why they push us to go to a traditional sense really hard. I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, in the medical field. That's because they want us to be able to provide ourselves. But I really like the double dipping idea, because I feel like in Asian Hustle Network, that idea pertains to everyone. Right. Which is the reason why the word hustle is so important in our network, because it means side hustle or working on other passion projects away from your 9-to-5 job. Everyone's always talking about that in the community. And seeing you're a clear example of that working. We want to hear your story more and see, like, and learn from you. In that sense, like, following a 9-to-5 job, what was your first big break into your side hustle that you're like, oh, wow, this could be a real hustle now. This could be my full-time gig. What was that first realization? Well,
it didn't come quickly. I can tell you that. I would say I was sort of, I remember in New York, I had 4 different desk jobs in my almost about 12 years of living there. And I would say the first 8 or 9 years of those 12 years was working at a desk job. And one or two of those jobs, I actually had to wear a suit, and it was very buttoned up. They didn't even know I was like pursuing other things, because that would be frowned upon. And I was always like ducking out during lunch or, you know, making up some excuse to be like, oh, I got a meeting, etc. And going to auditions. And so whenever I would get something, I would actually, like, I landed a part, I'd call out sick or use vacation days. Because it wasn't like I was working like, you know, 200 days a year as an actor. That's just not, I'm not in that position. So it was very sporadic. And so I was able to balance it. And I don't know that I ever had a moment in those 8 years where I was like, oh, I can just leave my job and, like, you know, rely on this side hustle now. I was involved with some fun gigs, some, I don't know if recognizable is the word, like one movie that I was in, went to Sundance, this film called Saving Face, which was directed by the director of The Half of It. I don't know, for those who are listening who might be on the younger side, Alice Wu, who made a recent movie on Netflix called The Half of It. Her first movie many, many years ago was called Saving Face, and I had the privilege of being in that. And so we went to Sundance, and, you know, I remember, like, having to use, you know, a week of vacation for that. And so, but I certainly didn't come back going, I made it, I'm going to quit my job. You know, it wasn't like that. It wasn't until 2008 that there was this big economic crisis, and the global economy kind of, you know, came to a screeching halt. And I got laid off from my last corporate job. And I was like, you know, there's nothing, no one's hiring right now. I was getting more and more like, I was building up my confidence and just, I guess, like, passion in this industry. And I was like, you know what, I got one life. I've got this momentum going. The universe took away my cushy day job.
Yeah.
But I am just going to use this time to focus on what I really want to do and pursue this all out. So I did. And, you know, I have to say, like, that was obviously a silver lining for me, because I've been fortunate not to have to look back. Because I was like, look, if worst comes to worst, I'll come back and look for a job.
Yeah.
But I didn't have to. And the shackles came off, and I was able to dive in. And, you know, it's crazy how the world works. You know, like, I was obviously petrified. I had no idea what I was getting into. But the fact that I didn't have to look over my shoulder or worry about, oh, I gotta deceptively live this double life. Yeah. I was able to just, like, free my mind up and focus on just this one, you know, industry I wanted to be in. And that's when, you know, things started to happen. And obviously it was a struggle, and it's still a struggle. Like, there's no question. It's not like I've made it by any means. Like, I as a freelance actor and film producer, like, you know, you're always, like, looking for the next job. You know, I have elected to walk down this path, so I'm not complaining. But it's, you know, I'm always having to reinvent the wheel. But at the same time, like, I'm at a point now where you know, I built myself up to, like, I know how it works. I have great partners all over the place. I've done a couple of things, you know, so luckily you build up your resume, and you just, like, get the privilege of working over and over again on different projects. So, so I would say, like, I totally, like, backed into it because I wasn't bold enough to just cut those cords. But since the universe provided that for me, I was like, okay, thank you. You know, like, I don't know if, I mean, I'd like to think at some point I would have quit and just totally went all in. But when it was taken from me, I had no choice. And I was like, okay, so here we are. So, so that was like, once the cords were cut, it wasn't like right away my career started to flourish, but little by little, I built myself up, you know, on projects. I actually went out to Asia to explore the industry out there, and I got really involved. I wound up booking this show as a host of a reality show called Shanghai Rush. your network builds up, you know, the hustle just, you know, proliferates. And after a couple of years of doing that, I was like, you know, I think, I don't know, this feels right, you know? And so there wasn't like a moment per se or a project, but it was just the aggregate of all of these things, you know, after I was like, I had, you know, got myself into a position, even if it wasn't necessarily the plan, to be able to just focus and dedicate myself to this.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's really interesting because, you know, a lot of people, they have their side hustle, right? But they don't have the 100% confidence to actually like leave their 9-to-5 to, you know, fulfill their side hustle full time, right? And they always have their 9-to-5 to fall back on, their cushy day job. But it seems like you, along the process, you gain that momentum and you gain that confidence, and you were given that opportunity to focus 100% on your side hustle. So you were like, okay, let's just do it, right? I think that's really interesting.
And your story is very inspirational for me to hear as well, because that's kind of, it's very relatable to my life like a year ago. Where I was working a software engineering job. I was trying to start like my real estate business. I was trying to start like the origins of Asian Hustle Network. And your story is really relatable to me because my boss needed me to do something. I'm like, I need to go to a doctor's appointment right now. You know? So that's really relatable. And I fully believe that, you know, everything happens for a reason. And I fully believe that, I think there's a lot of fear going to a new venture that you can't see the outcome of. But the way the universe works, like you said before, it's funny how it works, because if you really want to do something, like automatically, like the opportunities and the doors kind of open up for you to kind of continue connecting the dots. You know, this by all means not an easy task at all, because you're always constant fear like you can't, what if you can't connect the dots in the future? But the funny thing is, there's always a way out. There's always a new opportunity. You keep looking for it, and as you keep looking for it, your network grows, your knowledge grows, your confidence grows, and everything just makes sense. You know, but a lot of people have trouble getting to that realm. You know, it's not easy realm to get into because, you know, it's a huge opportunity trade-off. Like, what if you have a huge mortgage? What if you just have a new family? These are things you can't trade off, you know? So props to you for making that jump. Your story is super inspirational for me to hear, because it's so relatable. Because sometimes I think, wait, I'm the only one that goes through this crap, you know?
I think a lot of people go through it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely think that, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. And sometimes, you know, you can't write a playbook on your life and follow it to a T.
Right.
So it's when you're put in an environment, when the circumstances present itself, you know, you have to improvise. Basically, I feel like I think that as long as there's the will and determination to make something happen, you know, like you can't really draw up how your life's going to play out. You can't really blueprint it, and it'll work out perfectly and follow the, you know, the straight path. I think it's the circumstances that present themselves, the, you know, environment you're in, and just the determination and the hustle that someone has will more often than not, you know, open doors, present opportunities, and lead to results, you know. So it's really just about being there and applying yourself. And, you know, anyone who's got the wits and the wherewithal also, you know, I think just putting out good energy, being a good person, making smart decisions, like all those things. The biggest obstacle is always your own fear and your own, you know, like just sort of doubts. So yeah, I think it's the Asian hustle is real, and like everyone has it within them to accomplish what they really want to do. It's just about doing.
Yeah, just on the topic of Asian hustle too, you know, we understand your involvement with the Asian community, and we want to hear more about the organizations that you help start and help run, because it's so interesting. It's so parallel to our mission, the Asian Hustle Network, that we want to hear more about it.
Yeah, so I've always been involved, pretty steeped in the Asian American community. Growing up in the Bay Area around a large, population, going to obviously UC Berkeley, and even Cupertino, where I'm from, is a town that's full of Asian Americans, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's been instilled in me, to always advocate for Asian Americans and being part of affinity groups on so many levels. Like, I played a lot of sports growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I particularly love basketball, so I was really involved in Asian American basketball leagues. I founded an Asian American basketball league in New York when I lived there, and ran it for I was like the commissioner for almost 8 or 9 years. And I was, always volunteering or being a part of different nonprofits, community-focused organizations. And I guess more recently, being involved in different professional associations. Having worked for Andrew Yang has also given me a lot of entree into the community and sort of pitching in, helping out. I've always been steeped in the Asian American community, growing up in the Bay Area, in Cupertino, a large Asian American population,
Mm-hmm.
UC Berkeley, obviously. And I've always been involved in different affinity groups and organizations, everything from sports related, Asian American basketball leagues, which is a large thing in the state of California, Asian American nonprofits, and then more recently, having worked for Andrew Yang, the Asian American presidential candidate, he founded something called the All of Us campaign, which I'm involved in, along with a couple of other organizations, nonprofits, and individuals. We formed a coalition to come together to help combat xenophobia and racism, as well as raise money for COVID relief.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all done. The coalition is comprised of different Asian American, people or organizations, and we're using our resources, our professional resources and experience to produce PSA videos. We just hosted a screening of Be Water, the Bruce Lee documentary, directed by my friend Bao Win. We had a conversation that followed it that was about Black and Asian allyship. We have a bunch of T-shirts that are for sale, which the money proceeds go towards different COVID relief and social justice organizations. So that's something very near and dear to me. So both professionally and sort of on a personal level, like volunteering, very active in the community and things around our community, uplifting our voices, being an advocate. So yeah, that's really defined my life, I would have to say. From growing up in the Bay to living in New York, being involved in different organizations and different pockets of people in our community. So I'm very, very strong on that. And honestly, like a good deal of my own professional, endeavors, like producing, namely, is championing Asian American stories, stories that put the camera on characters or themes that, come from our community, or are told by Asian American storytellers, because representation matters, diversity matters. And in our business right now, like, fortunately, it took a long time, and it's still not anywhere near like perfect or ideal, but like Hollywood is becoming more open-minded to stories from the Asian American, storytellers, just, because as there have been shining examples of the last 2-3 years, they're marketable and profitable. And at the end of the day, that's the thing that they use to determine whether to greenlight things or to market things. And so we're seeing a rise of that happening. And that's encouraging too. And so yeah, so that's it drives me every day, and it always will. So it's great to it's great time right now for Asian Americans in I think facing out in terms of like different industries and having our voices be heard.
And shout out to Bao Nguyen. He was our episode 1 of Asian Hustle Network podcast.
Wow.
We recently interviewed him, and his story was amazing as well.
Yeah, Bao is I joke with him. I think he's doing a run through so many podcasts right now. And he's a great guy, great story, amazing storyteller, mad respect to him. Glad you guys got him. That's awesome. That is, I'll have to go back and take a listen to that one.
He's on episode 1.
Nice.
So just hearing more about your story and your involvement with the entertainment industry, what kind of initial barriers did you face? Like, you faced a lot of racism, setbacks. What was it like entering into the entertainment industry? And also to talk a little bit more about, you highlighting the Asian American story. Like, we've seen that you published a lot of documentary. Like, how did you get involved with that as well? And what kind of mission and purpose did you want to highlight in these type of documentaries?
Yeah, and I'd like to add on top of that too, I love that you explained all of your initiatives and your passion for, amplifying Asian voices around the world. And that's exactly what we're trying to do in Asian Hustle Network as well. And, a lot of people, especially in Asian culture, they are very reluctant on sharing their stories or sharing their voices, right? Because, our parents always told us to stay quiet, right? And to not share too much of ourselves to anyone else. But, in Asian Hustle Network, that's what we try to encourage people to do, is to share their stories. And if we are all able to share our stories together, we can connect with each other on a deeper level. And I'm also curious, to bounce back of Brian's question, we would love to know your perspective on the progress of in America starring Asian actors and actresses in leading roles.
What was it like when you first started in the industry, and what is it like now?
Yeah, you might have a different perspective than us because you're in the industry, but we might see it differently.
Sure. It's drastically different today than when I started. And I'm mindful of the fact that I'm my place in time or my entry point is very different than even those before me. So it has gotten better and better over the years. But when I started, I have to say racism, I don't know that it was an outwardly racist attitude against Asian Americans or anything from the industry. I think it's more of a sort of a systemic racism, which is the term that has been used a lot this year, and people are finally kind of waking up to the mainstream. And because when I started out, all the roles that I was being sent out for, a good deal of them anyways, were delivery boy, martial art, immigrant. I can remember my first few television credits were Chinese soldier on a TV show called VIP. Again, to date myself, I appeared on the Jay Leno show a few times in these really bad sketch videos that were always poking fun of Asians. And you ask, why would you let yourself do that? And looking back, I cringe, and I think a lot of Asian American actors will tell you the same thing, because we just, at that age, you're just like, oh my gosh, I just need to get experience. I need to get reps, and it also, quite honestly, it paid pretty well. And then it also allowed you entry into the union, which is everyone, when you start out, you're like, I just got to get my SAG card and, be able to kind of check that checkbox, right? So I would say in a way, I was fortunate that I wasn't stereotyped or pigeonholed too badly as far as only doing roles like this, because I don't do martial arts. B, anytime it was a foreigner accented part, I usually would either not go, or, you know, the few times that I did go to audition room and I was asked to do it, it was clear that I wasn't very good, or like I would maybe have a conversation with the casting person about it. And they would, you know, they would be open-minded to trying it a different way. So like, you know, sort of case by case, but like it was, the point is like, you just would see a rash of really bad roles being written, right? Usually always concocted by a non-Asian screenwriter who thought of an Asian character as a prop, essentially, right? So forget about being the center of a story. Forget about having, you know, being a lead, much less like a fully formed character. You know, obviously there was a couple of examples, like in my time. Well, actually, this is I didn't even start. I started after All American Girl came out. Joy Luck Club would be the movie that I think was the one that, when I was coming up, was the big Asian American film. And fun fact, I actually I was an extra in that movie. It was my first time ever on a big Hollywood set.
Nice.
And just being a fly on the wall was interesting. But, you know, so look, fast forward 25 years later, like, obviously we have all these great examples of big films and TV shows that are happening. You know, I like to say, you know, I try not to be bitter and sound like the old curmudgeon and be like, oh man, like you kids have it so easy. Like you know, like everyone's like, you can be like a Marvel superhero today, which is happening, right? Obviously with Shang-Chi. But I'm just like glad that I'm alive to be able to see this and to perhaps reap some of the benefits. You know, like I said, I produce as well. So putting on that hat has been, that's been really empowering, because I'm able to create and develop stories and pitch stories into the industry with, you know, with the Asian American voice, you know, either front and center or significant part of the story. And they're being met with, you know, it's tough getting any show sold or set up or financed, but at least they're listening and they're seeing that they're viable products. And that's really, that's a 180 from when I first started. And so what you see is probably what I see and feel like right now. Like we're thriving in a way, like it's never enough. Like, and you still see some stereotypes out there every once in a while, and you're like, oh, how did that one get through the police, right? The vetting. Who missed that one? Like, why are we still seeing that? But what I think the big picture is like we're moving in a positive direction. I think it'll only get better. I think it's what's been really great to see is like honestly, like the social media, the digital age, right, that came about, the YouTube creators, you know, the social media influencers, hashtag movements, all these things have just broken the doors down. They just like literally kicked the doors down and we're bum rushing in. Because back in our day, if we tried to raise ruckus, we had to write letters. We had to go stand in front of like a studio and picket, right, or something, right? And no one cares about that. The only people that see that are the people that are trying to go in and out of their, you know, front door, or maybe like in the mailroom, they're like, oh, here's a letter about offensive stereotypes. And now you put it online, you get a few thousand people behind it, and you keep resharing it, and it becomes a movement. Yep. And the studio execs are listening, going, "Oh, wow, didn't realize we were offending Asian Americans all these years." Okay, so I think like it's cool, it's great, it's helping all of us, and we got to keep on pressing. So you know, Twitter, Facebook, you came 40 years too late, but that's okay. We're here today. We're gonna reap the benefits and move forward, and just keep telling some great stories. You know. So I'm excited and optimistic about what's happening. And I forget some of the other parts of your questions. If I'm missing them, if you want to.
Yeah. We're gonna ask you a little more about your involvement in the documentary, how that got started.
Yeah. So I was, I came up in a very narrative world, like, just trained to read feature scripts and, television scripts. And so acting and producing, scripted work was always like, that was it. That's all I cared about. And then in 2010, a group of friends of mine and we were tracking this relatively unknown basketball player from Harvard University named Jeremy Lin, who was, blowing up the courts in the Ivy Leagues. And we decided, hey, at that time, YouTube was starting to pop. They had, all these experiments and creating like the first sort of wave of web series and just digital content, right? And so this group, we decided, hey, why don't we do like a little mini documentary series on Jeremy? And so we approached him, and he was at Harvard at the time, and he was totally like, just, there were no gatekeepers around him. It was super easy to get in touch with him. You go to a game and you could talk to him, kind of thing, because it's the Ivy Leagues. It's not like some big arena with security and like, thousands and thousands of people around. So we just asked him, hey, would you be interested in having a documentary made on you? And he was like, I don't know what that means. And so we explained it, and the idea was to just make like a very simple, like 3-episode docu-series about him. And put it on YouTube and call it a day. That was it. And it took him a while. He didn't say yes initially. He was really resistant to the whole thing. He finally came around when he became a professional on the Golden State Warriors, his first year in the NBA. He's like, I think his mindset shifted, because once you become a pro player, you realize, you become like you have to market yourself. You have to like, you're now a brand, so to speak. So we got together very quickly, and we jumped in and started filming, and we tracked him for a year, basically kind of through his first year in the NBA into the off season. And, if you guys from the Bay Area, I don't know how well you know the story or remember the story, but not a whole lot was happening. And we were thinking, okay, well, we'll just put this online and it's fine. Like, he made the NBA. That's an amazing feat for an Asian American. And then he, of course, like, winds up going to New York. And then our story was like, oh, where do we end it now, or do we just keep following him to see what happens? So we elected to keep following. He graciously let us keep following, because we had to find sort of a natural ending point. Because by the time you wrap the documentary and put it out, if in real life his story is very different, people are going to be like, well, that we already know what happened. So you just don't really know until you hit something, right? And so we wound up filming with him, and lo and behold, he February 2012 goes on this incredible tear that becomes the phenomenon known as LINSANITY, which then took our little YouTube web series project into a whole nother dimension. We wound up pivoting to become a full-length feature documentary that, we had phone calls and meetings up the wazoo from interested, parties, studios, A-list, filmmakers, all kinds of craziness at the time. Like, his own life was crazy. Our lives were crazy, kind of behind the scenes. And then we wound up premiering at Sundance, and we sold the film and got theatrical and worldwide distribution, and had the whole run of it. And so, thank you, Jeremy Lin, for creating the story, which helped us obviously sell the movie much easier. And B, to answer your question, after I made that and that experience, I was like, man, documentary, that was kind of fun. And maybe that's something I will keep doing. And as fate would have it, like it becomes it's one of those things that becomes a calling card, right? Like if you, any business, any walk of life you pursue, like you make something and people know you as that person that was associated with that. They're like, oh, so-and-so, you know, this person did that. And then I started getting connected to or pitched other sports related documentaries, or just documentaries in general. And then I think after I did that one, I forget exactly which one I did next, but I've probably done a string of like 4 or 5 different documentary, you know, type stories. A lot of them are rooted in sports because, you know, again, I really like sports. And so I did something around baseball. I did something around auto sports. I've done several more basketball things. And currently I'm looking at doing a bunch of other sport related stories, in addition to a bunch of other non-sport related things too. But that's how I got hooked into the documentary genre. And then wouldn't you know it, as time went on, here we are 2020, documentaries are like the hottest form of storytelling and content, you know, out there, like Netflix, Hulu. I mean, short form, like even Instagram or Snapchat, like those little things, anything that's not scripted and that stars actors is like nonfiction, unscripted documentary, right? And so documentaries now are like cool. They're marketable. You could sell them. They're relatively inexpensive to produce compared to, you know, scripted content that requires hiring actors and like all these different moving parts. And so so I'm really like rooted in the doc world now. I just think like docs have evolved in such a way that they're great forms of entertainment or infotainment, as a lot of people like to use the word, because usually it's like it's a teachable, like it's a story that you learn something from,
right?
But it's also entertaining. And so I've got a bunch of different doc projects in development, and but it all started from the LINSANITY experience. So again, you know, hats off to Jeremy for pulling me in a direction I didn't know I wanted to go.
That's awesome. That's really good to hear. And congratulations on all the success as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I guess want to hear a little more about your involvement with Andrew Yang and his campaign. That's how we first heard of you, and we're kind of curious to hear more about like what was the process like, and was it super stressful for you? Was there a lot of work involved, or you know, I heard some other snippets on your other interviews before how, you know, last minute decision, you had to like drive to Indiana, get some signatures. We want to hear more about like what was that being a part of Andrew Yang's campaign like?
Yeah, and I guess you know what was the hardest part of being on that campaign? You know, that you guys faced as you know, as Asians,
as
you
a
know,
team,
as a team, as Asians, whatever it may be.
Yeah, well, Andrew called me. I want to say it was the end of 2017, and he said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm running for president." And I always say when he called me and said that, my first instinct was like, of what, right? Because Andrew is not a career politician. He's never demonstrated an interest in politics. I knew him as a businessman, entrepreneur. I worked for him, as I said before. Remained good friends with him over the years, but totally out of nowhere. And so initially, the biggest challenge was obviously getting anyone to like take him seriously. And so after I hung up the phone with him, I soon thereafter read his book, The War on Normal People. He had this big announcement in the New York Times. I read this really long article that introduced his candidacy, and I started to, you know, just sort of, I let it marinate, because I was like, it's really interesting that someone I know is running for president, but like, is this like, should I throw my weight into this? Like, is this going to be a waste of my time? Like, you know, you have a natural inclination to want to support your friends, but sometimes when your friends are like a little misguided, you know, you don't necessarily want to like put your good name and reputation out there and just like, you know, burn all the bridges and cards that you have, right?
Yeah.
So I thought about it. I was like, okay, well, you know, what he's saying makes a lot of sense. You know, his proposals, his 180 some, I don't know, you know, different policy points he had on his website. Obviously, the flagship one being universal basic income.
Mm-hmm.
And as it all sort of synthesized in my mind, I was like, man, Andrew is right about so many of these things. And so it didn't take long before I was like, you know what, sign me up. Like, I know this is going to be a challenge, but I'm into it. So I wound up like, you know, starting out just as a friend, helping him get the word out. Mm-hmm. I changed my Facebook banner to like Yang 2020. Mm-hmm. A lot of folks were like, "Are you running for president?" I'm like, no. My friend, my brother from another mother, you know, no relation. I always got like, "Are you his brother?" Obviously, for, you know, we have the same last name. But I threw like I co-hosted this LA meet and greet with Andrew mm-hmm. in 2018. That the only way we got our friends to show up to was we said there was free alcohol. You know? So it was just, again, the struggle was just getting anyone to take him seriously. They're like, whatever, this is a stunt. It's cute, like, you know, yada yada. Like even his own friends, a lot of his own friends were not taking it seriously. And so it wasn't until so if you guys were following closely, he went on the Joe Rogan podcast mm-hmm. in 2019, mm-hmm. in early 2019. And I happened to be at that podcast because it was taped in LA. And anytime he came to LA, like I pretty much linked up with him. And I remember I actually, so they're you know, they were being the good frugal Asians, right? Like his campaign early on was not flush with cash. And so I was like, I'll drive you around LA, man. No worries. You would think like a presidential candidate was like humming around in a SUV, like a, you know, caravan, have a driver, that kind of thing, whatever. No, I was like, look for the gray Prius. And, so I drove Andrew out to the Valley, to Joe's studios, mm-hmm. And got to just sit there like fly on the wall. We weren't inside where he tapes across the table, but out in the waiting room, but it's on the monitor. So I was watching it, and you know, it was about an hour and change. I was like, he walked out. I was like, man, that was really good. Like, admittedly, was not a Joe Rogan listener, like avidly. Mm-hmm. I had heard a couple of bigger podcasts, but I didn't realize, even, you know, so I couldn't really appreciate his reach and popularity, I guess. Mm-hmm. I more just listened, like it was some guest I was interested in, but I was like, Joe Rogan, the MMA guy, like, okay, that's cool. But if you followed, you knew, like, from that day forward, I like to say there was before Joe and after Joe. And for Andrew, after Joe, man, like immediately his popularity just started to ascend, right? Mm-hmm. Like millions of people listened to that, reshared it. They're like, this guy, Andrew Yang, is like onto something. He started getting more requests to join other podcasts. You know, it was a meteoric rise, you know, and so no question, Joe Rogan put him on the map. And after that, you saw it, like his social media numbers climbed, his donations climbed. He qualified for the first debate, like all these things, like just started to click. It's like, holy crap. Like, and then his little ragtag team started to grow. Like, you have money, you're able to start hiring people, get more resources. His office grew, the head count on the staff grew. I was just a volunteer friend who then wound up getting invited to join officially part of the campaign. I was like, you know what? I'm so in already. I might as well just make it official, get myself an email address, and put myself on the hook to produce stuff for them, right? Before I could just be like, oh, I'm a friend. I'll do this on my spare time. Now I was like, you know what? I'm shoving aside my whole life, and I'm just gonna be on the Yang Gang train. And so I flew around to a bunch of the debates, held a bunch of fundraisers all around. I was regional, meant like mostly West Coast, but I did stuff in New York where I have a lot of, network and friends. Also a couple of other smaller cities. And so, I fully got steeped into it. And then I even wound up going to Iowa in January of this year where the initial caucus was starting off. And so I would say after, so again, pre-Joe, it was obviously the challenge was like convincing anyone to take him seriously. Post-Joe, I mean, there was still a degree of that because I think a lot of folks were still like, get out of here, right? Like, there's no way this guy can win the presidency. It's too far-fetched. But then he kept like making every debate. He kept getting onto some big night, talk show, and more media, more coverage, more breakout moments. And suddenly everyone was like, can he? No. Like, and so then the challenge shifted a little bit more to like, I guess the biggest challenge at that point, because people started taking him seriously, right? So that challenge was sort of addressed, was about just getting over that hurdle of like, can an Asian guy who is outside of the system really take this thing? Like a narcissistic reality show who had zero political experience did in 2016, right? So yeah, we're taking his policies seriously. We love what he says, but man, can we really vote someone like that in? And so it was just constantly, trying to respond with, evidence and persuading them to believe that yes, we can have someone like that, uniting the left and the right and leading us forward. And obviously we fell short. We fell far short. I mean, I remember calling both in Iowa and New Hampshire, which were the first two states in the system, either phone banking or showing up in Iowa to different events and meeting people. And everyone at that point knew Andrew Yang. Like, he's a household name now. But just still being met with resistance around how realistic we could have. Not people wouldn't necessarily say we can't have an Asian guy be the president, but I think there was like that was always sort of like something that's in the back of your mind, is like, I wonder what these Midwestern, good old fashioned, valued people like feel about this. Like, it's sort of, it's not programmed into their heads. So they're just like, I don't know what to think of this guy. Right. So like, and it very much reminded me of the Jeremy Lin story, to be honest, which is crazy. Since I had, I guess, the privilege of seeing that up close too. But just like this outsider who no one had ever heard of before, like getting into some big arena and performing way above expectations and reprogramming everyone's minds to think, wow, that I didn't know an Asian guy could do this, right? And even Asian Americans thinking this, because we so seldomly see people in that these platforms, or have the spotlight on them, like shining bright as can be. So it even takes us a second to recalibrate and accept this that this is happening in front of our eyes. And so unfortunately, things fell short in New Hampshire and suspended the campaign. But it was obviously a great ride, and I say today that I think it was it was all meant to be. It's like easy to say this now, but I do think that it was obviously a stretch to have him win in his first go as a complete outsider. But now, as you know, Andrew is like cemented himself in the public's eye. He has all kinds of things going for him. He started a nonprofit. The pandemic has obviously underscored how right he was on so many levels. And more people, like, his popularity has grown, right, post-campaign. He's signed with CAA. He's got a podcast. He's a media maker. He's writing another book. He's, Andrew Yang did not go under a rock and disappear. Like, he is going to be very much a part of our, the conversation of helping America heal itself and move forward. Hopefully things go the right way this fall. And, he'll have a big say in things. But look, don't count him out. Like, who knows what'll happen 4 or 8 years from now. He's still a young guy, relatively speaking. I think this first go at it just put him on the map in a solid, legitimate way. And now he can kind of sort of figure out, next steps as we go, but he's not a complete outsider anymore. Now there's this like experience and this confidence he's instilled in people, and they'll take him more seriously the next time, or whatever the next thing he puts his mind to. So I think it's, obviously it was a great thing. And on so many levels, and most importantly being that he's helping America wake up to a lot of the ailments that we had just kind of been ignoring, so it was really it was a fun ride, obviously. Again, just grateful and lucky to have known the guy and been a part of this and seen him grow into this role. Never would have predicted it, but that just goes to show you what the Asian hustle can do.
Love That's amazing. Yeah, it's really inspiring hearing you share that story. And I definitely think that, as a society as a whole, it's very hard for people to experience change. And I think that's what, that was a whole, issue with, people believing like, can we have someone like this as a president? But like you said, Andrew Yang has been put on the map, and now we have people start thinking like, okay, maybe we can see someone like that as a president. So I think this is like a really good stepping stone, and we're headed into the right direction. We just need to keep at it. We just need to keep, reminding people like, Asians are, we are trying to put ourselves on the map, and we are going in the right direction. And this is our opportunity to, amplify our voices. And now more than ever, people are more proud to be Asian, right? Especially due to like COVID and like all of the racism and xenophobia. Like, Asians who were embarrassed to be Asian back then, like when they were younger, they're coming out and saying like, I'm actually proud to be Asian, And I think that's our generation has changed a lot in the last couple of years.
Even couple months.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. No, I mean, definitely 2020 has sped along a lot of things, for better or worse, taking 10 years of things and, I think condensing it into 10 weeks. Mm-hmm. So I guess if there's a silver lining to all this, here we are experiencing this and people kind of being forced to it's like a reckoning, mm-hmm. in terms of like, hey, wake up and smell the coffee. Like, you can't shed the skin, you can't shed your culture, your history, your family. If we don't step up and be proud and do something, I think also underscored by the fact that there's been this rise of Asian Americans in media, in politics, mm-hmm. led by folks like Jeremy and Andrew. It's our community is the fastest growing minority group, right? And I think it's only going to continue to grow. And so this awakening, is it's been very transformative. And 2020, again, it's unfortunate the way it's played out with the pandemic, mm-hmm. but I think we're going to come out of this stronger than before. And so it's been encouraging to see a lot of the people in our community, the organizations, individuals, galvanize and, put together a response and call to action, both for like within our community, also in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. Mm-hmm. And then even in my bubble of media and entertainment, see, things continue to proliferate and grow. I know a lot of shows and movies are being set up And I think once things get back to normal, we're just going to continue to like run with this momentum and demand, and grow into sort of our seat at the table that we've finally taken, this proverbial seat. So it's a great time.
Love it.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, it was amazing hearing from you, Brian. For our listeners, how can they hear and learn more about you and the type of projects that you have going on right now?
Yeah, I guess the easiest way is following me on social media. My Twitter and Instagram handles are both BriFlies, BRILYS. And yeah, I post pretty frequently on both, especially Twitter. I don't know, the millennial or Gen Z people are a little less active on Twitter, I feel like, but I've fallen into the Twitter sphere because I think it's I think Twitter is like the thing that is changing society for better or worse. I like to focus on the better. Honestly, it's what got Andrew, as close as he did to the White House. But yeah, I'll post about my projects and, other random thoughts. And so that's the easiest way.
Awesome.
All right.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate your time and your stories. It's so inspirational to hear. Yeah. A lot of commonalities and different paths that happen in your life. And this is just the very beginning too. Can't wait to check in, in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for hosting this and doing this. It's so necessary to keep helping our stories get heard. So, I know you guys are doing, great service, and I'm going to go back and listen to Bao's interview and keep track of you guys. So good luck and stay safe in this time, and hope to run into you guys down the road.
Awesome. Thank you. Here. You too.
All right.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe to the show.
We would like to get to the top 10 on iTunes, so be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We release an episode every single Wednesday, so stay tuned.
Thank you guys so much.